FPL Gameweek 2 is almost upon us, so in this video I'm going to go through everything that we've learned in Game Week 1 and give you my tips for Game Week 2, including transfer tips, my free hit and wildcard drafts, captaincy, and more. There's timestamps in the video below if you want to follow along. Let's get into it. Okay, so just recapping quickly how I got on in Game Week 1, I finished on 66 points with a 1.5 mil rank, which on paper is very good for me, but if you look at the returns, they actually only came from 4 players. Starting off with my captain Haaland, he got a brace in that game, which I was really happy with. He managed to outscore Salah, and it wasn't a fluke either. He registered 2 XG in that game, so if there was any doubts that Haaland wasn't going to score goals this season, those doubts have been swept away now. Menyo got a 15 pointer, he scored a brace and got maximum bonus. I'm really happy with that because I was actually going to bench him over Strand Larsen, so I'm glad that I went for that decision in the end. It was a bit of a 50-50 for me. Van der Ven got his clean sheet against Burnley, which I think a lot of people would have been expecting. Tarkowski was on track for a double-digit haul before he got his clean sheet wiped out in the latter stages of that game. But you can't really complain because Leeds did deserve to win that game. They registered 2 XG in that game. But I am quite excited about Tarkowski. I think he's going to be an absolute machine for defensive contributions. He got 15 in that game against a newly promoted side. So you can just imagine how many defensive contributions he's going to make against those sides higher up in the table. Obviously, when you couple those defensive contributions with clean sheets as well, there's potential for some big hauls in there this season. Now, if you're sat there worrying that you didn't get many points in Game Week 1, honestly, just don't worry about it, because even just looking at my team, on a different day, Semenyo doesn't get his brace, Ollie Watkins gets a brace, Salah gets a brace, and everyone has him captain, so my 1.5 mil rank could quite easily be 6 mil rank. It doesn't matter at this stage in the season. All that matters is that your team is set up well for Game Week 2. So that's a quick recap of how I got on. Now let's move on to things that we learned in Game Week 1. Okay, so moving on to things that we learned in Game Week 1. Now I'll start off with the Liverpool-Bournemouth game, just as that was the first game that was played. Ekitike, Gakpo, and Semenyo obviously all smashed it in that game. Ekitike and Gakpo could be great options if Isak doesn't sign, but that is a big if. Newcastle are currently linked with Johan Visser, and they have been for most of the transfer window. And if that transfer goes through, I think they're a lot more willing to sell Isak. So while I think Ekitike and Gakpo are great picks for Game Week 2, I don't think you should be rushing out to buy them. As for Semenyo, I did say that he is the best 7 mil pick in Game Week 1, and I still thoroughly stand behind that. He's going to be the main man at Bournemouth. If you're looking at bringing him in and potentially freeing up some money to fund moves elsewhere in future game weeks, I think that's a good move. As for the defences of both teams, they both look very shaky. Obviously with Bournemouth, the defensive mistakes, they sort of came to fruition, all those issues that have been spoken about throughout the transfer window after them losing all their players. Liverpool's defence also look very shaky. They look very vulnerable on the counter-attack, which is actually how Bournemouth got both of their goals. But I don't think it's any time to panic about Liverpool not keeping clean sheets this season. I think eventually they will get that balance right. Moving on to Newcastle Villa now, obviously there was no Isak in the squad, which was to be expected. To fill his place, we had Gordon playing number 9, who has played there before. I don't know if that's going to be a permanent thing. I think certainly if Johan Visser comes into the squad, I think Gordon will move back over to the left. So he might be a good option for Game Week 3, but you can't really go there long term. Konsa obviously got a red card. Now, if you had him in your Game Week 1 teams, I think you're just very unlucky there. Obviously, he's not going to get red card every week. He does come back in some nice fixtures after his suspension, so I don't think there's any rush to be selling him just yet. Brighton, Fulham, Ruta played number 9, so I think for that reason, you just can't go anywhere near either of them. I think they'll take minutes off each other throughout the season. And then O'Reilly was on penalties. Now, I think he's only a 5.5 mil midfielder, so in future game weeks, he could be a really good option there. A great welcome back to the Premier League for Sunderland. They won 3-0 against West Ham, who put in a really poor performance. It's starting to look like we should have backed Sunderland in Game Week 1 rather than Burnley, but we'll learn more about that in Game Week 2. Thomas Frank got off to a winning start with Tottenham. Richarlison and Kudus shined in that game. Obviously, it was against a newly promoted side. I think we will learn a lot more about Tottenham in Game Week 2. Kudus looks like he could be a good option at 6.5 mil. I wouldn't go near Richarlison though, because I think at some point Solanke will come back into that starting 11. Man City, obviously the player that everyone is talking about, and that's Reinders. He's a 5.5 mil midfielder who's now gone up to 5.6, maybe even 5.7 by the time you watch this video. He hauled. Now, if he continues to get good minutes, he's going to be someone that comes into everyone's team at some point this season, I think. Haaland and Aït-Nouri also hauled, and Marmoush was on the bench. Now, if you had Marmoush in your Game Week 1 team, you can consider yourself a little bit unlucky, but I really don't know what to tell you. Like, there's always that risk of rotation under Pep. James Trafford also starts. Now, that's an interesting one because he could be a really good option moving forward. but I wouldn't go there just yet because City are linked with Donnarumma, and if he was to sign, he would take that number one spot. So a one to watch, but I wouldn't go there just yet. Chelsea attackers blank. Now, there is no need to panic sell Palmer or João Pedro. I think they were just coming up against a very good Palace defence, and they still have great upcoming fixtures. So I don't think there's any reason to panic sell them just yet. Is Chris Wood now the FPL GO? I think he might be. He got a brace against Brentford. Whether or not that continues throughout the season, we'll just have to wait and see, but he seems to be starting the season the way he finished last season. Arsenal's defence remained firm against Manchester United. They look like they're going to be the best premium defence this season. Also, Gyökeres was subbed at 60 minutes for Havertz, so those issues with minutes are already coming to fruition. But you should note that Havertz looks like he's picked up a knee injury, so it looks like moving forward, Gyökeres should have good minutes. Obviously, Trossard could play false nine as well, so it's not guaranteed that he would play 90 every week. But I do think that is good for his minutes now. And then United's attack actually looked really good in that game. Cunha and Mbeumo have really added a lot more threat going forward. So they're definitely a team to watch. And then just a quick glance over that weekend. It looks like we might have a few teams outside of the newly promoted sides in a relegation fight. So that's definitely one to watch. Obviously, it's only one game week, but who knows? Throughout the season, we might see Brentford, Everton, maybe West Ham dragged into that fight, so it should make it a bit more interesting around the bottom. Now, here's some early figures of this week's transfer data. Now, these numbers might change slightly by the time you watch this video. Quickly with the goalkeepers. Now, first things first, you should not be making a goalkeeper transfer unless you're on a wild card or a free hit this week. Now, I think that's what a lot of these transfers will be, with the exception of maybe Edison, who people might not have been expecting to get dropped. Moving on to defenders. Now, Ballard is the most transferred in defender this week. Now, I do think that is a little bit reactionary to his 17-pointer against West Ham. Obviously, there's going to be some reaction to that, but I do think he was just coming up against a poor West Ham side. I don't think that necessarily means that Sunderland are a defence we should be targeting for the season. But then also heavily brought in is 8 Nuri. Now, I think a lot of people will just be moving from Vardy to 8 Nuri, so if you want to do that because you think Vardy might be out for some time, then obviously that's a good option. Cash has been brought in quite heavily. Now, I think a lot of people will just be moving sideways here from Konsa to Cash, because obviously Konsa did pick up that red card. And then Gabriel, obviously heavily brought in for Leeds at home this week. I think a lot of those will be free hitters, but it also looks like the Arsenal defence is going to be pretty solid. So even in those tougher fixtures that they have coming up, they can still pick up points and clean sheets in those games. In terms of the heavily transferred out defenders, you've got Vardiol, Konsa, Frimpong, and Wan-Bissaka. Now, I can understand each of those. I think West Ham were very poor defensively against Sunderland. Even though they only conceded 0.9 XG, I still think it's not a good sign if you concede in 3 goals against a newly promoted team. Wan-Bissaka is obviously very highly owned. Now, a lot of that ownership was for that Sunderland game, so if he doesn't keep a clean sheet this week, which I think is going to be very difficult for him against Chelsea, his ownership could go down quite drastically. Konsa obviously got his red card, so those transfers out are quite understandable, especially if you're on bench boost. Vardiol was a bit of a surprise injury, so again, if you think that he's going to be out for some time, that's an understandable transfer out. Midfielders in. Now, the midfielder on everyone's mind is Reinders. Obviously, 5.5, he's gone up to 5.6 at the time of recording this video. He looks like he's going to be a very good option at his price point for Man City, because he's going to get quite good minutes while Rodri is out. And if he is going to continue to play higher up the pitch, he's going to be a very good option that everyone is going to want in their teams. And then Semenyo, obviously, I think he's a good transfer in, but it is a little bit reactionary. He's not going to get a brace every week. Obviously, he does have a good fixture run coming up, so that is an understandable transfer in. Kudus as well is heavily transferred in. He's got City away this week, so I don't think there's any rush to bring him in this week. And then Gakpo as well, I would just wait. He's going to be a huge rotation risk if Isak signs, because Ekatike can play on the left. As for midfielders out, Wirtz is obviously the most heavily transferred out midfielder. I don't think there's any rush to transfer him out. He's got Burnley away in a few weeks' time. He's got Newcastle this week, which isn't the best fixture for him, but I also don't think it's an awful one that he's a must-sell this week. One sale that is very valid is Marmoush. If you wanted to transfer out Marmoush, I will not have anything against that, because I just think he is a huge rotation risk in Pep's team, and that's just how it is for City attackers unless you have Haaland. Palmer, I think, is just very reactionary. He just came up against a good Crystal Palace defence. Obviously, a lot of those people would be looking at Saka for Leeds at home, but I still think Palmer's a great option for game week 2. Fernandes, again, I just don't understand that one. I think there is just a bit of panic selling there. Like, are you really surprised that Fernandes blanked against Arsenal? It wasn't like he was going to get a massive haul in that game, was it? He's then got Fulham away this week, and then he's got Burnley at home. So there's really no need to sell it. And then the forward that everyone wants at this moment in time is obviously Ekatike. Now, if Isak doesn't sign again, I've spoken a lot about that in this video, then he is going to be a player that is going to have very high ownership because he is going to get good minutes if Isak doesn't sign. He's going to be nailed on, locked in, and I think he'll be able to get maybe not as many points as Salah, but he'll at least be able to get pretty close for 6 million less. So why wouldn't you have him in your team? And then obviously Chris Wood, Haaland, both great options, both got a brace in game week 2. What I'll say about Haaland is if you're taking a hit to bring him in, it's definitely not worth it. And then interestingly, Richarlison is heavily transferred in. That has to be reactionary because surely people must know that Solanke is going to come into that starting 11 at some point. And then unsurprisingly, all the forwards that have blanked this week are now heavily transferred out. Isak obviously isn't going to play in game week 2, so that's an understandable transfer out. But Bowen, Watkins, João Pedro, do you really need to transfer them out? Now, if you're making these transfers because you're panicking because you got off to a really bad start this game week, this is a little wild card that I've put together. I will also say that there's 0.7 mil left in the bank with this draft, so there is some flexibility if you wanted to go for different players from the ones that I've picked. I've gone for Petrovic and Dubravka for my goalkeepers. Now, obviously Dubravka's quite an easy one. That's a 4 million playing keeper. Why wouldn't you have him? As for Petrovic, Bournemouth just have nice fixtures. Obviously, they have just conceded 4 goals to Liverpool, but it's Liverpool, so I'm not panicking too much over Bournemouth defence just yet. In defence, I've got Gabriel, Cash, Dan Burn, Ballard, and I can't even pronounce this guy's name, but Chelsea 4 million defender, Achampong. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he started in game week 1 against Crystal Palace, got the clean sheet and bonus points as well. So he could be a good option at 4 mil. I've got him in on the wild card because if he doesn't start in the future, well, he's only a 4 million defender. You can just put him in the back of your bench. I've got Dan Burn on the bench. He's got obviously Leeds and Wolves in game week 3 and 4. So I think he's a good option after Liverpool at home. Gabriel, I've got him in purely just because he's got Leeds at home this week. You would still play him probably against Nottingham Forest at home or Newcastle in game week 6. You probably wouldn't obviously play him against Liverpool or Man City that he has in the next few game weeks, but I still think he's good on wildcard. And then Cash, obviously, Aston Villa have great fixtures. Cons has just been suspended. Cash is a 4.5 mil cheap, look to get good minutes and got defensive contributions in game week 1. Ballard, I'm a little bit skeptical on, but he's 4.5 mil and there's an extra 0.5 mil in the bank here. So you could either downgrade him and fund a move elsewhere, or you could go for him. He's got a good fixture this week. You could even argue that he should be starting this week. So I think he's still good on wildcard and their fixtures aren't too bad. And then Rodgers, he's someone that I think is great for game week 2. He's someone that I actually had in my game week 1 draft that I didn't actually go with in the end. I got Verts instead of him. I managed to free up money elsewhere, but he's still a good option from game week 2 onwards. I think Villa, obviously, they didn't have the best game against Newcastle, but that is a pretty tough fixture. And I think moving forward, they're still going to be a good option going forward. And Reinders, obviously, everyone's going to have him this week. I think you'd be stupid not to have him on a wild card. I think at 5.6, he could provide amazing value there. Then obviously Palmer's just blanked, but I've still got him on my wild card. I think West Ham away, he actually has a pretty good record against West Ham. I think that is a great fixture for him. I don't think, and he's got great fixtures coming up. I don't think there's any need to not have him on wildcard. Semenyo, again, I think he's going to be a player that's going to be like Embuemo last season. I think he's just going to have a really good breakout season and super consistent, 90 minutes. You know exactly what you're going to get with him. You know you're never going to have to look at the team sheet and see if Semenyo's starting. I think he's the main man at Bournemouth. Definitely the best 7 mil option, in my opinion. Then for my front three, I've got Ekatike, Haaland, and Mateta. Now, obviously, Ekatike, there will be a lot of speculation over his minutes when Isak arrives, which I think he personally will. Now, I've said probably hold off on getting Ekatike, but if I was on wildcard, I probably would. If Isak doesn't sign, he is going to be a player that is heavily brought in and his price is going to go up quite quickly. So I think just to capture that potential rise in team value, it could be worth it. And if he is that main man, he's such a good option. He could, in theory, be someone that you captain against Burnley in game week 4, especially if you don't have Mo Salah. Now, I have backed Haaland over Salah in this draft. I just think Haaland, his XG is always that guy that's in the box. He's just in the right places, and I think he's just going to get another massive haul this season of points. I just can't see why you wouldn't go for him. Now, I do have double Palace attack in this draft. Obviously, they didn't score against Chelsea, but I do think that Mateta especially is a player that I definitely have on wildcard. He's got Sunderland and West Ham in 4 and 5, so I think he is a very good option. Sarr, maybe not so much. He is great value at 6.5, don't get me wrong, but I, I'd be skeptical of double Palace attack, but I'd still probably have a wild card that looks very similar. And like I mentioned, you have an extra 0.7 mil in the bank with this draft, so there is some flexibility if you wanted to move to different players. So sticking with the Game Week 2 drafts, let's move on to my free hit draft for Game Week 2. Now, I actually have my free hit active this week, so this is the free hit that I am going with. Now, in goal, I've got Dubravka and I've got Kinski on the bench. Now, obviously, your bench doesn't matter because you don't need that bench for future game weeks for rotation options. You only need potentially one player to come in if one of your players mysteriously doesn't play. Now, obviously, Sunderland have just scored 3 goals against West Ham, but I don't think that guarantees that they're going to score against Burnley. They only registered 0.9 XG in that game, and if you actually look at the previous 3 results of Sunderland Burnley, there's only actually been 1 goal in the last 3 games. And for that reason, I've sort of got Balal starting as well to sort of back both defences. I'm hoping for a 0-0 in that game. I could just back Estev and hope that that Burnley defence delivers, but it's a big risk. I think I'm just going to back both teams because Sunderland, I probably would have gone double Burnley defence in this game, but because Sunderland did look good in game week 1, I'm just going to back both teams. Then also in defence, I've got Gabriel with Leeds at home. I don't think I need to say much more about that. Obviously, set piece threat, clean sheet is highly likely in that game. Good option on free hit. Now, the reason I'd go for Truffer over someone like Senesi is that he just has a bit more attacking threat. Obviously, Senesi is good from set pieces if you want that sort of goal threat, but it's hard to predict set piece goals. I think for this, I probably would just go for the more exciting pick of the fullback, only because it's a free hit. If I was on wildcard, I'd probably go Senesi, but on a free hit, I think just the more attacking option, I'd probably go Trevor. Now, obviously, for captain, I've gone for Saka on my free hit. Obviously, Arsenal did not look good going forward against Manchester United, but they were playing Manchester United away. I think Leeds at home is a much nicer fixture. If you actually look at Arsenal's records against newly promoted teams over the last few seasons, they just score goals for fun. So I do think it is a good week to have Saka on a free hit. And his ownership's so low that he could really punish people. Then obviously Semenyo, Wolves at home, great fixture. Morgan Rogers, Brentford away, great fixture. Brentford did look very bad in that opening game week. And then obviously West Ham for Cole Palmer. So I think all in all, that's a good midfield on a free hit. That's definitely the one that I'm going with and locked in with. Up top, I've got Haaland. I could opt for the 3-5-2 with this draft. I could downgrade Haaland to someone else and then move to Salah, but I think I'm just happy with how Haaland played in game week 1. I don't think there's any reason to back against him. And then obviously up top, I've got Evan Nilsson for Wolves at home. I do think that's a good fixture for him. They have been tight affairs though, so I'm not entirely sold on double Bournemouth attack. I think I definitely want some menu in, but I'm not sure on Evan Nilsson, but he's there for now. And finally, I've got Gyökeres. Now, I'm expecting his minutes to be a lot better this week with the news that Havertz has picked up a bit of a knee problem. So his minutes look very good, and it's Leeds at home. You just can't really back against a number 9 that's got Leeds at home. And then finally, I'm just going to talk about captaincy this week. So my top 5 are Saka, Haaland, Salah, Palmer, Semenyo in that order. Now, obviously, Saka is going to be my captain this game week. I'm on a free hit. I think Arsenal are going to want to make a statement in that game that they obviously didn't play well in game week 1. I think they're going to want to make a statement that actually we are title contenders in game week 2. If you have Haaland and you wanted to captain him over Saka, I wouldn't have too much against that because Brighton last season, for as well as they were going forward, they were actually not very good defensively at all. And that's partly just because of the expansive football that they play. They sometimes get caught playing out from the back. And that could really suit Man City with their press. So I do think Haaland will score highly this week. I've got Salah third. Now, Salah is still Salah. He's still a great option. If you wanted to captain him, I think obviously he will be highly captain this week. Newcastle is not a great fixture for him, but it's not an awful fixture either. So I do think it is the week to back against his ownership, but also he could quite easily outscore Haaland and Saka. That's just how FPL is. Palmer fourth. I mentioned he has a good record against West Ham. I also think West Ham just over not just from game week 1, but last season, the season before, they've just always leaked goals, and that's just playing on my mind a little bit that maybe Palmer does have a good game in game week 2. And finally, I've got Semenyo. He's just my, I guess, differential captain pick if you wanted to go a bit out there. I think don't just go for differential's sake. I think just go for the captain that you think will get the most points. But if you want to have a bit of fun with it and you want to take a bit of a punt, especially if you're on a free hit, then who knows, maybe go for Semenyo. So there is a complete guide for Game Week 2. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Let me know in the comments what your plans are moving forward. How did your Game Week 1 go? Was it disastrous? Was it good? Was it a bit average like mine? Let me know in the comments. I'm interested to know. I'll see you in the next video.